Everyone told her not to come back to Duluth, that the old Harbor Street Church was cursed by winter and memory. But a 7-month pregnant woman ignored every warning. She wasn't looking for ghosts. She was just looking for shelter for one more freezing night. Yet when her loyal German shepherd began pawing at the rotting floorboards beneath the altar, she uncovered a hidden room sealed before the moon landing, and inside a secret the city buried in snow and silence for half a century, a secret that could rewrite everything she thought she knew about love survival and what we owe to each other. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. Drop your city, state, or country in the comments below. It always amazes us how far these stories travel. Winter wind lashed Lake Superior like a punishment. Sarah Miller drove the old 2009 Toyota Camry slowly across the aerial lift bridge into Duluth, Minnesota, her wipers scraping the windshield like broken metronomes. Sarah was 31, tall, thin, but with the softened roundness that pregnancy adds to bone, with light brown hair tied into a loose braid under her knit beanie, pale skin that always blushed too pink in cold weather, a face that once might have been cute in a warm diner lighting, but now had shadows carved under her eyes, like a woman who has cried too many silent nights inside her car. At 7 months pregnant, her belly felt like both promise and gravity. She always walked now with a hand braced under the curve of her stomach, half instinct, half fear that if she did not hold the child, life would steal it. Ranger, her German shepherd, age 7, black and brown sable coat, a working dog frame built for movement, intelligent eyes with a slight droop at the corners that always made him look like he carried more wisdom than any human in the room, sat up in the passenger seat. He licked the glass once, then stared into the snow like he recognized ghosts. Ranger was not a cuddly dog. He never had been, but he had chosen Sarah. Ever since the shelter 3 years ago, when Sarah visited without knowing what she wanted, and Ranger walked to her crate door, sat upright, and just stared, not begging, not wagging tail, just quiet eye contact like he was selecting her. Since then, Sarah often whispered that Ranger wasn't truly a dog, that maybe he was some kind of ancient protector trapped inside fur and bone. Right now, his hackles were up. Sarah's anxiety ticked up in response. She felt her daughter roll inside her belly like slow underwater thunder. Sarah whispered, "It's okay. We're okay. Just one night here in Duluth." She had found a short-term winter rental near Canal Park, listed by some local fisherman, cheap enough and no questions asked. she needed not forever. She just needed one night, not in a Walmart parking lot. Duluth was a city she never imagined returning to. Not because of trauma, but because it was too honest. Water like this, lake water pretending to be ocean water, always told the truth. Lake Superior had a way of forcing people to see themselves, and Sarah had been avoiding mirrors for too many months. She parked near Canal Park, near the ice-crusted railings by the shore. Huge flakes of snow drifted sideways in hard wind bursts. Ranger inhaled deeply, like the air itself was trying to say something. Sarah stepped out of the car. She was wearing a thick red down coat that she bought at a thrift store, faded, but warm enough. Underneath was a loose gray sweater, stretched tight over her round belly jeans, and boots, with the leather scuffed out at the toe. She looked like a woman trying to disguise how fragile she was. She placed a glove over her stomach. The baby kicked. A sharp, confident kick. She whispered, "I know, sweetheart. I know you want this to be home too." She took 2 steps toward the break wall. Ranger moved faster, like a guided missile sniffing a line on the ground. He trotted in a half circle, nose low to the icy stones. The lake wind whipped his fur in streaks. Sarah's breath came fast, stinging her lungs. Last week, she was in Iowa. 2 nights ago, she was in Wisconsin. For months, she had drifted from state to state, hunting any place to land like a bird whose wings were too tired to flap anymore, but too afraid to land because landing meant admitting she did not know what she was doing. Ranger suddenly stopped, froze. One paw lifted. He looked at a small metal shape, half buried in ice, wedged between rocks in the break wall. Sarah approached slowly, heart hammering. The object was a rusted tin box, edges eaten by time, but the hinge still intact. Sarah crouched down awkwardly, with the weight of her belly, and chipped the ice around the tin. Ranger whined once low and uneasy. Sarah opened it. Inside was a single postcard. The picture showed an old brick church with a white steeple in a snowstorm. On the back, faded blue ink, careful handwriting from someone who probably wrote letters, more than they spoke. Don't let the light go out Harbor Street. 1967. Sarah felt her heart throw itself against her ribs. Harbor Street. She had never been in Duluth before, had never heard of Harbor Street. Why was this postcard buried here like a time capsule, timed precisely for her to find on the very day she arrived? Was the timing random? Or did fate sometimes leave breadcrumbs for lost women who were still brave enough to keep moving? The baby kicked again. Sarah closed her eyes. That kick felt like a yes. She whispered, voice trembling, "Are you telling me to follow this? Ranger?" Sneezed once, then sat upright, with ears pointed like arrowheads, staring at nothing, or maybe staring at something invisible to human eyes. The lake growled its ancient voice. Sarah felt the strange, quiet certainty spread in her chest. She was not here to hide. She was here to uncover. That knowledge was terrifying, but also freeing. For months, she believed her life was happening to her, like a disaster she had no control over. But what if she was supposed to be here? What if destiny was not the grand, flaming sign people imagined, but rather a rusted little tin box, half frozen under lake wind? She clutched the postcard. Harbor Street. She would go. She didn't know what she expected. A clue. A person. A place to give birth without fear. But Sarah Miller had learned something through pain. A woman becomes dangerous when she stops begging to be saved. She becomes unstoppable when she chooses her own direction. Snow coated her eyelashes as she whispered to her unborn daughter, "Okay, baby, I hear you. We will follow the light." Ranger barked sharply once, and somehow that bark felt like a sacred oath. Harbor Street felt like a place the sun forgot, but Sarah Miller kept walking. The red brick church was shaped like a relic, narrow steeple, pointing at the low gray sky, old stained glass, cracked like dried riverbeds. Ranger trotted ahead with focused steps, tail low, but not fearful, his gait purposeful, like a military scout dog. Snow layered over the steps, over the iron railing, over the carved oak door that someone once took pride in. Sarah's lungs ached from the cold, and her daughter curled tightly inside her, like the baby sensed that below this hollow church was a separate temperature, a separate time. Sarah pushed the heavy door open. It shrieked, a sound like metal tearing in half. Inside, the air tasted like abandoned seasons, like dust that remembers footsteps. Rows of wooden pews still stood, though several had collapsed. Candle stands leaned against the walls like drunk ghosts. Ranger sniffed into the aisle, stopping at the left side near a large patch of old floorboards. Sarah followed him and felt the baby shift a subtle pressure, like the child was turning its entire body to face that direction. She crouched down, hand bracing under her belly, and slid her palm across the dusty wood. It was all cracked and uneven, but one board had a tiny circular ring screwed into it. A hatch. A hidden hatch. She swallowed her breath. She tried to lift it, but her strength wasn't enough, not with her free hand, and her center of gravity compromised by pregnancy. She stood slowly, pain resting at the back of her spine. "Ranger, I could use help." Ranger barked once, then oddly he scratched the hinge area with his paw, like he understood. Sarah wedged the rusted ring with a broken piece of pew wood, pressing her weight forward. Finally, a violent crack, and the hatch door snapped open. A stale gust of trapped cold air rushed upward like the breath of someone who'd been waiting 50 years to exhale. Below a ladder of metal. Sarah hesitated. She had been many things these past months: defeated, ashamed, exhausted, but she had not been reckless. She looked around for anything that could serve as a light. On the pulpit, she found a small oil lamp, old dented glass cloudy. She doubted it would work. But she carried a Bic lighter in her coat, the one she used to burn the ends of loose threads on her jackets to keep from fraying. She checked. The lamp still had oil. She lit it. The flame trembled like a nervous bird. She lowered herself slowly into the hatch, one step at a time, Ranger following her at the top edge, watching her descend like he was memorizing how to rescue her if needed. The ladder was colder than ice. The air was different. It smelled like winter inside winter. Sarah landed on concrete. Her phone flashlight flickered, but the oil lamp gave the room a golden womb-like warmth. The bunker looked exactly like a Cold War shelter. Shelves of canned goods lined the walls, a foldable metal cot, wool blankets stacked in a trunk, and a stack of journals placed neatly on a metal box. Ranger whined at the top, so she called voice level. "Come." Ranger descended each rung awkwardly, but successfully, landing next to her shaking snow from his fur. He stood like a sentry. Sarah placed the oil lamp on a metal table, then opened the first journal. The handwriting was small, neat, careful. The name signed on the inside cover read Eleanor James, R.N. Sarah read slowly, the writing trembling just enough in her hands to show fatigue and shock mingled. Eleanor James was a nurse. Dark auburn hair, thin and knotted into a low bun, described by a self-sketch on the title page. A tall, angular face sharpened by worry in her own doodle and her own description. "I am not afraid of solitude, but I fear forgetting kindness." Eleanor wrote about winter storms and building a soup kitchen of warmth for sailors trapped in Duluth. How she opened her doors, gave soup and bread, and her last jar of honey, because no one should freeze alone. Sarah felt her lungs sting. This nurse, decades ago, thought about strangers, the way Sarah wished someone had, thought about her last month when she slept in her car in that Walmart parking lot in Iowa. Sarah whispered, "You and I might have been the same species." Ranger nudged a small bell on one of the shelves, then pulled it slightly. Sarah laughed under her breath, a real laugh. She picked up the bell and rang it. The bell was high, delicate, like a child clearing her throat before singing. The baby kicked in perfect rhythm. Sarah gasped and then laughed again, a breathless, cracked lip, winter-tired laugh. "We are a family band already, aren't we?" She wiped her eyes. She didn't cry for tragedy. She cried because, for the first time in months, she felt like she had stepped into destiny instead of survival. She placed the bell on the metal box, then pulled the second journal. A photograph fell out Eleanor, standing next to a tall man in Navy uniform. On the back, Henry Collins, the man who taught me that storms pass. A new name, a new mystery. Ranger suddenly perked up, ears stiff. Sarah heard footsteps on the floorboards above. Not many. One set. Slow. Deliberate. Someone was upstairs in the church. Sarah grabbed the oil lamp, blew it out instantly. The bunker went dark. She grabbed Ranger's collar, felt his pulse pounding through his fur. Sarah held her breath. The footsteps above paused above the hatch. She heard a man's voice, very low, gravel thick. "I told them to board this place up." Her blood froze. She recognized the tone, not the voice itself, but the type of man. Authoritative, used to being obeyed. Sarah pressed against the wall, heart pounding. Ranger stayed silent. No bark, no growl. Like he too understood that this was not the moment to challenge, but to listen. The man above jiggled the hatch ring. Sarah's entire body went rigid like steel. Then the man sighed heavily, and his boots scuffed away. She waited 10 entire minutes before inhaling a full breath again. When she climbed back up, the church was silent. Whoever he was, he did not open the hatch. He did not stay. He might return. But Sarah had found the bunker. Or the bunker had found her. She touched her stomach again. The baby was calm. The message was clear. Now the past inside this church was not dead. It was waiting for someone to uncover it. Tonight, the winter wind outside was not a warning. It was a summons. Snow fell in thicker sheets the next morning, the kind that makes a whole city seem like it has been carved out of white chalk. Sarah Miller stood at the front porch of the old brick church, with her red thrifted coat zipped all the way to her throat, the weight of her 7-month belly shifting her balance forward, her breath clouding, warm against the sharp Duluth air. Ranger stood beside her, tail low ears, flicking toward every noise on Harbor Street, like he was reading Morse code in the wind. Sarah had not slept well. Every time her eyes closed, she saw the oil lamp down there in the bunker flicker out, and she felt the same anxiety she had felt 3 nights in Iowa, when her heater died in the Walmart parking lot, and she held her belly, praying that frozen air would not steal her child before it took her. This church was not simply old. It had a pulse. She could feel it. And someone else wanted to rip that pulse out of the city and pave it over. She would find out who very soon. A black SUV rolled up tires, crunching the packed ice on Harbor Street. The door opened. A man stepped out. He looked around 46 or 47, with the type of build of someone who used to lift weights in his 20s and now maintained it enough to project dominance. He had a sharp jawline that looked carved dark hair graying evenly at the temples in a pattern women on Pinterest boards would call distinguished silver, and he wore a black wool coat that looked like it cost 17 times what Sarah had in her checking account. His eyes were pale blue, cold blue, like ice that has seen too many winters, but refuses to crack. This was Mark Turner, a commercial real estate developer with the kind of reputation that made waitresses in small coffee shops lower their voices when they spoke his name. No beard, clean-shaven, every line on his face precise and curated, like he made facial expressions only when they benefited him. Mark Turner's personality was the type that made him a millionaire at 29 ruthless deals. First, people last. The rumor was he came from a family of hardware store owners who lost their land to eminent domain when Mark was 16. Since then, he reportedly made an oath no one would ever own anything he wanted. Mark stepped toward her hands in pockets that half smile that wasn't a smile at all. You must be the pregnant girl who broke into the church. Sarah straightened. You must be the man who wants to turn it into a parking lot. Parking lot? He shrugged. Office building. Mixed-use retail. Depends on which investors I need to impress. Ranger stepped in front of her, shoulders rising like tension wires. Mark didn't flinch. Cute dog, he said. Hope he's vaccinated. The baby in Sarah's belly kicked, and pain shot across her ribs. She exhaled slow. If this man wanted a fight, he wouldn't get the first punch from her. She answered evenly. This church belongs to the city, and the city deserves to decide if it lives or dies. I already made the city an offer. Mark took one step closer, voice low. People like this place as an idea, but no one wants to pay to keep a dead church alive. Sarah stared into his cold eyes. It isn't dead. Mark laughed once, a short, bitter sound. Buildings don't matter. Memory doesn't matter. Money does. He turned back toward his SUV. I'll enjoy watching you realize that. The SUV pulled away, tires screaming on ice. Sarah's hands were shaking. She pressed a palm over her daughter. We are not letting this place die, she whispered. Ranger nudged her hand. They went back inside. She had to learn more. She returned to the bunker and began digging through the trunk under the table. Inside, carefully sealed in thick, waxed envelopes, were letters Eleanor James wrote, but never mailed. Some addressed to the Navy Department, some to a city council member, some to someone named H.C. She opened one with trembling fingers. The paper was fragile, yellowed at the edges, but the ink, dark blue, still clear. It read, If I have nothing else to give, I still have soup and light. Sarah read it twice. Then she read it out loud. Ranger shifted and whined. The words echoed through Sarah's chest like truth fired from a cannon. Eleanor James believed survival was not just scraping through. It was sharing warmth. The baby kicked once, gentle. Sarah whispered, We will protect this place. But she needed help. She couldn't fight Mark Turner alone. She climbed out of the bunker and locked the hatch. She left the church to find allies. She drove to the local food bank. Inside, a small group of volunteers were packing pantry bags. The woman in charge, Linda Price, was in her early 50s. Short, stocky, gray-blonde hair chopped in a practical chin-length bob, a flannel shirt, and eyes that held equal parts kindness and exhaustion. Sarah explained everything Harbor Street Bunker Eleanor's soup kitchen legacy. Linda's face changed. Linda said quietly, My grandfather told me about a winter in the 60s where a red-haired nurse kept half the dock workers alive by giving away soup and blankets from the old church. Sarah felt heat climb her throat. It's real, she said. Linda stared at her belly. And you're pregnant and alone, and you still came to us first instead of calling reporters. Sarah swallowed tears. Because this isn't a scandal. This is history, and history shouldn't be bulldozed. Linda nodded firmly. I'll gather our people. Within hours, word spread to small bakery owners, old fishermen at Canal Park, and the retired librarian who remembered Eleanor. The next day, volunteers showed up at the church. Ranger discovered a gas pipe crack. in the basement old boiler room. He barked non-stop until everyone evacuated. A plumber named Mitch came immediately. Mitch was a heavy-built man, around 60, with a thick, white mustache, oil-stained Carhartt jacket, and a voice like gravel and cigarettes. He patched the leak, muttering, "That dog is smarter than half the contractors I've hired." Someone knitted a navy blue scarf and tied it around Ranger's neck. Ranger lifted his head a little higher after that, as if wearing a medal from a secret knighthood. Sarah watched all of them strangers working together. For the first time in months, she felt like she wasn't surviving alone. She stood on the altar and raised her voice. "We are not saving a church," she said. "We are saving a light that saved others." Ranger barked once, like an amen. Sarah had never given a speech before, but she had a mission now, and she would not let Mark Turner erase memory with concrete. City Hall in Duluth always felt like it was built to withstand storms. Its stone facade was thick, its windows narrow, its hallways echoing like the sound of boots marching through history. On this morning, the lake wind outside screeched so violently that the old panes rattled like they were begging to be set free. Sarah Miller felt that wind in her bones as she stepped into the hearing chamber, her red thrifted coat buttoned almost too tight, her 7-month belly round beneath it like a ripening planet. She walked carefully, not wanting to show how the weight strained the ligaments in her back. Ranger walked at her heel, upright, proud his new navy wool scarf tied neatly around his thick, furred neck, the gift of the community, now making him look like a decorated soldier preparing to testify. There were at least 60 residents in the chamber, fishermen in worn brown coats, bakery women dusted with flour, retired teachers in knitted hats, all the kind of people who survive Duluth winters, not because of comfort, but because of grit. In the front row sat a man no one had expected would come. Henry Collins. The very same Henry Collins from the photograph. He had to be in his late 70s now, maybe early 80s. He was tall, even when sitting, but hunched forward, wearing an old navy pea coat that had been repaired by hand many times. His hair was thin gray, turning to white, and his face was carved by sun, wind, grief, and sea, each line a history no one else had lived. His hands shook when he pulled a small hearing aid from his pocket and adjusted it. He looked up and saw Sarah looking at him. He nodded once, a small nod, but it was the nod of a man who had been waiting decades to tell a truth that no one had asked for. Mark Turner entered 10 minutes later. He wore a charcoal suit that looked like it was custom-tailored in Manhattan, not Lake Superior country. The crispness of his shirt, the shine of his shoes, the expensive obsidian cufflinks were a deliberate weapon. He looked like a man who believed that everything and everyone could be bought. His cold blue eyes scanned the room, and when they landed on Sarah, they paused, but he did not blink. He sat at his own table, spread out glossy printouts and spreadsheets like surgical instruments. No emotion, just the mathematics of profit. At the panel table were the 5 people on the Duluth Historical and Zoning Committee. The chairperson today was Dr. April Richardson, a woman in her mid-40s, black, tall, slender, with a natural crown of tight curls, pulled back in a silk scarf, wearing a warm, camel-colored coat draped over her shoulders, like a cape. She had worked as an urban preservation scholar at the University of Minnesota Duluth before accepting this civic post. Her face was calm but discerning, her deep brown eyes scanning every motion in the room. This was a woman who people whispered had once lost the house her grandmother lived in because of a developer's manipulation of zoning loopholes. And that wound made her ferociously protective of community memory. The hearing began with Mark Turner making his statement. Mark's voice was smooth, like glass that could cut. He outlined his development plan. Demolish the church. Replace it with a heated indoor parking structure and mixed-use retail, which he claimed would revitalize the economic center of Harbor Street. He presented estimated tax revenue increases. He spoke about modernization. He spoke about how Duluth needed a future that didn't rely on nostalgia. Sarah forced her jaw to stay relaxed, even though every line he spoke sounded like a threat against the unborn child she was carrying. Then it was her turn. She stood up slowly, because everything in her body required deliberation now. She took the microphone, and she placed 3 things on the table: the rusted tin box, the 1967 postcard, and the first journal of Eleanor James. She spoke not with drama, not with grand gestures, but with the steady voice of someone who had learned that small truths, when spoken clearly, are stronger than lies, wrapped in luxury. She told them about Eleanor's soup kitchen during winter storms, about the lost men saved by hot soup and human warmth. She spoke about the bunker. She spoke about volunteer groups already building a plan to convert the church not into a monument, but into a winter community shelter kitchen for families and seasonal workers who fall between the cracks. Then she asked Henry Collins to speak. Henry stood slowly. The entire room rose in silence, as if reverence was involuntary. Henry's voice was old and rugged, but still carried the authority of a man who had commanded respect on deck in waves that towered taller than houses. He told them about one night in 1967 when a cargo ship had almost gone down near Duluth's harbor. He told them how Eleanor James fed 30 men soup with her own last bag of barley. He told them how she never married because she once said she already gave her heart to those who washed ashore. And then he said the sentence that made the entire room fall. Still, I am alive because of that woman. A sudden tightening seized Sarah's abdomen, a deep, demanding tightening. She winced and grabbed the table. The room gasped. Chairperson April Richardson immediately stood, a doctor in the crowd, a woman in her 50s with short, sandy hair and kind eyes behind thin gold-rimmed glasses, approached Sarah. Her name was Dr. Susan Beck. She was an OB-GYN at St. Luke's Hospital in Duluth. She examined Sarah gently, her hands steady, voice level, explaining softly that these were Braxton Hicks contractions, practice contractions, not active labor. The audience released the breath they had been holding. People laughed with relief. Even April smiled. The tension broke not into chaos, but into shared humanity. The vote was taken. It passed. Unanimous. The church was now officially designated as a protected historical community site. It would be transformed into Harbor House, a winter community refuge kitchen. Ranger received a certificate reading Good Boy of Duluth, and Sarah held it up laughing with tear-wet eyelashes as Ranger puffed his chest like a knight decorated after battle. But Mark Turner did not clap. He did not smile. He walked out with his jaw clenched and his shoulders set, like a man who had decided that if he could not win by vote, he would win by another method. Sarah saw him leave, and she felt under her ribs another tightening. Not from the baby, from dread. By late March, the snow fell in tiny, hesitant flakes, like winter itself was growing tired of holding its breath. Duluth became a softer gray, the lake surface still steel, but the shore slowly thawing, and the air less like a blade, and more like a reminder that spring would eventually come, whether people believed in it or not. The old brick church on Harbor Street had scaffolding on one side. Now, insulation being installed, electrical lines being rerun, pipes inspected, shelves built. Harbor House was real now. Not theory, not myth, not a relic. A living place. A breathing place. Sarah Miller walked through the sanctuary, wearing her red coat open now, because she ran too warm these days. She was 32 weeks along now, her belly firm skin stretched tight and pale under her sweater. Every movement she made had a small groan attached to it, but her face, less hollow, now had new light. She had gained some weight, the good kind, the healthy kind. Her cheeks looked warmer. Her hair, light brown, was tied in a bun, but wisps escaped around her face, giving her a softness that had been absent when she arrived in Duluth. She had become someone people listened to, someone whose presence felt like a furnace in a blizzard. Ranger lay near the front door like a gatekeeper. His sable fur had been brushed earlier by one of the Harbor House volunteers, a retired third-grade teacher named Marie Porter, a short woman in her late 60s with silver hair tied back with a blue scrunchie, wrinkled cheeks rosy from the cold, and small round glasses that fogged when she talked excitedly. Marie adored Ranger. She called him Sir Ranger and snuck him homemade peanut butter treats. He looked proud every time. Today was the first official day Harbor House opened its doors to the public. A banner hung inside the entrance, soup and safety for every winter. There were shelf-lined pantries filled with dried beans, barley, canned tomatoes, spices, a cupboard full of wool blankets, hot water kettles, electric warmers, and a bulletin board where people could pin business cards of places that offered short-term work for cash through the winter. Duluth was still a tough place. Not everything could be solved with soup. But warmth could buy time. Sarah stirred a big pot of chicken soup. There was something inherently holy about stirring soup in that space. Ranger's nose twitched every time the ladle scraped across the pot bottom. Volunteers worked all morning. Linda Price, from the food bank, helped stock shelves, labeling them in clear block letters. Mitch, the plumber, with the oil-stained Carhartt jacket and rough white mustache, came back to check the boiler one more time, muttering, "No gas leaks. Killing anybody, if I can help it." And Dr. April Richardson brought a donation from the University Archives, original photographs of Duluth Harbor in 1960s winter storms, to frame on the wall. Each photograph showed how people survived here, not because they were tougher, but because they were together. Sarah placed the postcard from 1967, "Don't let the light go out," in a simple wooden frame, and hung it near the front. She whispered to Eleanor, "James, we're doing it." That was when Mitch called out, "Sarah, delivery," at back. Sarah stepped into the side hall. Ranger beside her. Outside stood a younger man wearing a FedEx uniform. He was tall, mid-20s, lanky, brown curls peeking from under his cap freckles, earnest eyes. His name tag read Kyle W. Kyle spoke with a shy smile. "Delivery for Harbor House." He wheeled in 3 large boxes of non-perishable food. Sarah signed. Kyle hesitated a little, then said quietly, "These are. There's no sender listed." "Well, I mean, there's a sender name, but it wasn't a company." Sarah felt something shift in the air. Who Kyle swallowed. Turner. Not Mark Turner, LLC. Not a corporation. Just Turner. Kyle left. Sarah stood there, her daughter shifting inside her with one long sliding movement. Ranger tilted his head. Sarah opened one of the boxes. Canned goods. Good ones. High quality. Enough for weeks. Sarah closed the box lid. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. She knew exactly what this meant. Mark Turner had lost the vote, but something in him, the part that once was 16 and watched a bulldozer destroy his family's hardware store, something in him recognized this place was not about nostalgia. It was about survival. And maybe in his own way, silently, secretly, he wanted to be part of preserving survival instead of stealing it. Sarah did not romanticize him. She did not forgive him. But she acknowledged the truth. Sometimes, redemption begins anonymously because the ego isn't ready to bow its head in public. She patted Ranger's neck. "Let it be," she whispered. Evening came. People arrived. A single mother with 2 boys. A fisherman with a twisted ankle. A postal worker waiting for pay next Friday. A homeless teen who slept in a car. Sarah ladled soup. The room filled with steam, bread smell, quiet laughter, soft voices. She had no idea how many more storms would come. But tonight, she felt something ancient and warm inside her belonging. Ranger lay by the entrance, ear twitching, guarding, listening. Outside, Duluth's sky glowed faint orange. Inside, Harbor House glowed golden. Before Sarah locked up that night, she turned off all the lights except the small oil lamp she had used in the bunker the first night she descended that ladder. She placed the lamp on the old altar and lit it. Flames reflected on the walls like a soft, breathing sun. Sarah placed both hands on her belly. Her daughter kicked, slow, steady, like a rhythmic heartbeat. She whispered, "We're home." The wind outside did not howl anymore. It bowed. It surrendered. In the end, the lesson was simple. Sometimes God's miracles don't come as lightning from the sky. Sometimes they arrive as a bowl of soup on a cold night. A stranger who shows up at the perfect moment. A loyal dog who refuses to leave your side. A pregnant woman who refuses to give up hope. God doesn't always send miracles from above. He often sends them through ordinary people, just like you, just like me. So in our real life, in our everyday routine, maybe the calling is this: be a small light. Hold the door. Offer a meal. Listen without judgment. Because maybe you are the miracle someone is praying for tonight. And if this story touched you, leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Share this story with one person who needs hope today. Subscribe for more stories like this, more proof that goodness still lives here. May God bless you. May He bless your family. May He keep you safe through every winter of your life.